Welcome to our Wellness Wednesday Health Show. My name is Dr. Hewlett, President and founder of Back Pain and Sciatica Center of Texas, where we offer regenerative pain solutions for your healthcare needs. The purpose of our Wellness Wednesday Health Show is to bring you important and relevant health and wellness information from leading healthcare experts that you can apply immediately into your life. And I'm excited today to have a special guest who is both a professional counselor and self-care coach, Ms. Julia Ayraud. Julia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Well, Julia, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you said, I'm a licensed professional counselor, and I have a group mental health practice in the Woodlands and Texas. And I also have a personal coach business. It's called Self-Care with Julia, also known as Julia Ayraud Coaching and Consulting.
How did you first get interested in health and wellness and down this path in your personal life and even as a career?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in health and wellness and taking care of ourselves. And so as a counselor, I've always, I received counseling myself and felt like I wasn't understood or heard. And so I wanted to make sure that I could help people in my position and give back to them. And so that's kind of how I became a counselor. And as far as a coach, it's actually an interesting story. I've been severely burned out before as a school teacher, which was my first career. And a lot of people experience burnout at different levels. It doesn't have to be via a career. But with my career, I was severely burned out, and I was taking a trip to Kauai, I guess it was about a year ago, and I was traveling there for both fun as well as a conference for counselors. And so I made it through one 3-hour session, and normally I go to conferences, it rejuvenates me, it gets me excited to implement things, and I could only make it through one training. The rest of it, I was just like, I don't want to hear one more counseling related term, word, anything. And I realized, you know what, that as I was forming a group practice at the time, I was burning myself out, and it looked a lot different than it did to me as a teacher. I just kept going and going and not pacing myself. And so as I was building a practice, and so I just realized that, you know what, I needed to take care of myself. I needed to treat my body better. And so thus I decided, you know what, I've been trying to figure out what type of coach I wanted to be. And so I decided I wanted to be a self-care coach. And that's how that started.
I love that. And when it comes to self-care, I think that's something that we don't even think of. It's like, you go through elementary education, you get out of graduate from high school, and whether it's college or you start a career path, like sometimes we're just going through the motions, not even realizing why we're going through the motions. And whether it's burnout, unhappiness, frustration, all these other things. So I love that concept of self-care. So when you use that term, for those of our listening, what does that mean, self-care coach?
So it's really learning to take better care of ourselves. There's so many different levels of self-care. I mean, when you say self-care, a lot of people think it's a massage or getting your nails done. And it's so much more than that. It's really, I like to look at it across like the wellness wheel, if you're familiar with that. You know, you have your financial, you got your environmental, the emotional, the social, the mental, all these different areas that encompass the wellness area. And I like to look at it as it's having boundaries in life, and being able to say no. It's being able to budget things financially. It's being able to take care of your back or, parts of your body, and that type of thing. It's, learning to have a support system. So it's a lot of different things. And yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned lack of boundaries, and I love that, and saying no. I was a couple years back, and I was listening to an interview, and it was with Warren Buffett or somebody else similar caliber, and they asked them what their secret to success was. And they said they say no 99 times to every one time they say yes. Because they said, if I say yes to everything, I'm going to spread myself too thin and I'm not going to be successful in all those areas. So they're very,
Right.
very selective. And so, talk more about how you see that lack of boundaries, throwing ourselves into work. What do you see is kind of the big problem with that?
So as far as work goes, I think, and it even goes down to how I was personally. We throw ourselves into our jobs. We work maybe even up to 12 hours a day, some of us. Then we go home. Then we hardly see our families or friends or whatever. Maybe we even have a drink or something like that. We engage in unhealthy behaviors. We don't, put ourselves first. Part of boundaries is learning to say, like you said, to say no to other things, to pace yourself in your day, to pause, have some breaks. Um, to not engage in every little thing that even we may want to do, but maybe it's not the best time to take part in it.
Yeah. I think so often we're busy, but we're not always productive. Where it's like we're going, 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 like from sunrise, maybe before the sun rises, we're up, we're checking phones, we get emails from work. If we're plugged into social media, we sometimes go down that
Right.
path, and before we know it, it's been 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and then it just goes, goes, goes. And so that's something that I've really worked with our team here is productive versus busy. And when it really gets down to it, like sometimes we can have busy for an entire day for 10, 12 hours. And when we look, what do we accomplish? You're like, I don't know, but I was really busy, but we didn't actually produce a lot. And
Right.
I think that's part of the so many demands on our time, whether it's cell
Exactly.
phones, dings, bings, pops, like there's so many interruptions. How do you help people kind of filter out that boundaries and establish a boundary? Would be like a step one to establishing boundaries.
Something as simple as just turning off your notifications on your phones, like with the digital electronic type thing. One thing I do, especially like in my practice, is to set aside a block of time, and I will check emails or return calls at that time. Now,
Oh,
I'm not perfect. I don't do it great all the time, but so that you're not wasting time and energy doing it throughout the day.
I like that concept. So instead of every time your phone bings, dings, it's almost a reflex. We go to our phone every time we hear that
Right.
alert, and block scheduling. So emails get checked, for example, at 9 a.m., not 6 a.m., but that gives you time to focus on other things and take care of yourself and other important tasks.
Right.
I like, okay, very cool concept. You talked about these 8 dimensions before. Will you briefly touch on all those? What are the 8 dimensions of health?
Sure. So I have my little cheat sheet in front of me because I can't remember all of them sometimes, but you have the physical, the intellectual, environmental, spiritual, social, emotional, financial, and occupational. Um, and so each of them has something different. So for instance, like physical, it'd be taking care of your body, eating a healthy meal, taking care of your back or different pains, seeking a doctor when you need to and getting help. Um, Intellectual would be things like with your mind, maybe meditation, mindfulness, um, that whole pacing yourself type thing and just staying in the moment. Perhaps even just learning something, reading a book. Environmental could be doing something for the environment or planting a garden or something like that. Spiritual can also be things like not just prayer, but meditation as well. Um, think, um, Social would be like your support network, your friends, your family, spending time with them, or realizing like if you're an introvert versus an extrovert, realizing that you need that time to yourself to recharge. And then emotional is, I like for instance, knowing when you need to seek a counselor and not waiting to the last minute. Just like with a doctor, you do checkups, you know. So with a counselor, maybe it's part of your self-care practice just to check in, which is something that I do. Um, and then financial, having a budget, especially knowing your financial data, not being afraid to look at that. And then lastly, occupational, learning to, like things that we've talked about, pacing yourself with your work boundaries, enjoying what you're doing, providing breaks throughout the day, having more passion in what your job is versus doing it, treating it as just a job.
So it sounds like these 8 dimensions, it's really about developing a plan for that, not just saying, hey, self-care is I'm going to binge watch my favorite series on Netflix and get my nails done and massage, but it's actually, there's a lot of thought. You covered a lot in a short period of time there, but when you go from physical to intellectual to environmental and spiritual and social, emotional, financial, occupational, there's a lot in those areas. Do you ever find it overwhelming for some people just to be like, oh my gosh, that's too much? Like, where's an easy,
Sure.
how do you bite size that?
So, I mean, you could just focus on one area, for instance, a week or for the month, and just try to develop that habit of, let's say, occupational. You want to focus on that. You want to get your boundaries better. You want to check your emails at a certain time and get that schedule and that routine going. Be better at not checking social media throughout the day and have a certain time or two that you do that, or you update your business website or whatever it may be. You want to start small and bite-sized chunks rather than doing everything. Another thing that you could do is doing, one category from each, but that may be overwhelming to some people. So that's why I recommend maybe starting with one category.
Okay, say like, hey, for this week or this month, I'm just going to focus on improving my physical health. All right,
Right.
give it maybe give it a few weeks or a month and say, all right, I've got that. Now let's go into my intellectual and just like a building block, just one
Right.
step at a time. I like that concept. It was several years ago. My wife and I went to something similar. It's called Life Book. And it was
Mm-hmm.
the founder of Precious Moments. You may have seen those little figurines, but the founder of Precious Moments, and he developed it because it was his personal playbook of how he achieved success. Both, he had a great marriage and a great family. He also had founded multiple businesses, including Precious Moments. So a lot of his friends and people and his peers in his work environment be like, hey, John, how do you do it? Like, you seem to have a great marriage and a great career. A lot of times people think they have to sacrifice one for the other, and he seemed to have both. So he pulled the curtain back and said, hey, it wasn't easy, a lot of lessons learned, but this is what I've implemented in my life. And it was like a 4-day program. So it was like all day, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, for example. And I remember like at the end of each day, my wife and I would talk, our brain was just so exhausted because we had never thought that much about what we wanted to do in our life. We were just going through the motions like most people. We never thought about these 8 categories. Like, all right, what does my physical health look like? Come up with a
Mm-hmm.
plan for it. And so that's been a real good process. Now I know everybody can't step away for 4 days, but it is going to take some time, I think, because what you're saying is even if it's just an hour a day, just set aside some time in the morning, even plan what your physical health, what you want it to be, plan what your environmental health, and so forth. Is that kind of the self-care concept, is
Mm-hmm.
plan and then easy to execute, make it easy to
Yes.
execute?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
It's funny you mentioned this cell phone, and maybe some of our listeners can relate to this. This was a couple months ago, and I'm guilty, right? Even though I try to do my best, I fall prone to the cell phone. Um, my youngest daughter, we were going to take her to the mall. This was all pre-COVID. We were going to take her to the mall to the Build-A-Bear, all right? And she'd been looking forward to it for several weeks, and it was going to be a special date with mom and dad. And somehow I got in a text conversation with someone earlier in that day. It wasn't a life emergency. It wasn't anything urgent. But I found myself as we were there, I had my phone in my back pocket. And with every buzz or ding, I would check it and respond
Mm-hmm.
on this ongoing conversation. And my wife looked at me and she gave me the look. And I realized, gosh, what the heck am I doing? This is something that we'd looked so forward to doing with our daughter, this special date. So I actually had to take it out of my pocket and I gave it to my wife and said, put it in your purse. Because if it's in my pocket, like it just keeps buzzing and I keep reaching for it. So it had to be out of sight, out of mind for me.
Yeah.
And then after that, I was able to disconnect from it and enjoy the rest of the date we had with our daughter. And so it can be hard.
Right. And I encourage a lot of people to do like a digital detox,
Mm-hmm.
if you will,
Yeah, so
having
so what's that?
so like taking, whether it's a day, whether it's a week, off of your phone.
Okay.
And the weekend, put it away. And it's kind of hard when you don't have like a landline anymore as much, to do that. But turn off the notifications, don't check social media. One thing that my husband and I love to do is go on cruises because I don't use my phone except for pictures. And so it's just completely refreshing to unwind, recharge, and to just not be so consumed by, ooh, what is Joe Schmo doing, or what is,
Yeah.
someone doing on social media, or they've got this great, and then you get lost in that and you're not focused and mindful and aware of what's going on in front of you, kind of like what happened to you, it consumes
And
you.
and in 10 minutes you get back from that detox. In 10 minutes you're brought up to speed. You can figure everything out in 10 minutes on social media or the
Right.
internet. You'll be right back there so you don't lose anything. That's a great
Right.
concept. And even right now, is that something with your clients, or you recommend, hey, if you can't go on a cruise because the situation we're in currently, pretend you're on a cruise at home. Just
Yeah. Have a
put it in the
staycation.
drawer.
Have a staycation, and that's something that I'm actually working on, is building it's going to be called Project Retreat, and it's going to be a kit for anybody for self-care to really give you suggestions and things and activities that you can do, like a staycation, or if you will, or to recharge for a day or half a day and just unwind. It's so important that we do that, and you don't need a vacation just to do that all the time. You can do it in the comfort of your own home.
That sounds very cool. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned that we go through school, then we go into either a trade, a career, continue education, we get married. It's like we go through all the motions, but no one ever really teaches us how to take care of ourselves in these 8 areas. Like we may have bits and pieces from maybe our family members or mentors growing up we saw, and we may accidentally implement some things, but no one really teaches us how to take care of ourselves. They say, hey, go to work 40, 60, 80 hours a week because that's Americans. We're hard workers.
That's
We're
what
known
we
for
do.
that. All right. And then we're overstressed, and then we drink too much, we smoke too much, we have bad vices, then we have health problems, and then it's just kind of this snowball effect. One of the things that a mentor shared with me years back early in my career was that we cannot medicate our way out of a lifestyle problem. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot medicate our way out of a lifestyle problem. However, we can self care ourselves out of a lifestyle problem. And I think that's a huge value of working with someone like yourself is a lot of health problems people have could be addressed by working on those 8 dimensions of their
Mm-hmm.
wellness. Because we know from research done over decades that the majority of health problems are from stress. Number
Yes.
number one cause, contributing factor of cancers, heart disease, and so forth is stress. Then we go into obesity, which we overeat because we're stressed,
Mm-hmm.
and then it just snowballs from there. And any last, as we're wrapping up on our time here, any last words of advice for our audience today?
I'm trying to think which way I'd like to, you know, size chunks. I really like that idea of just taking one of the things and focusing on either a month or a week, that different item, and just fine tuning it and getting better at it. I think that would be something huge. It would be a good takeaway that they can do.
That's a great, and 8 months goes, I mean, it's already been, my time reference is this COVID world we live in. So it's already been 4 months since the COVID was introduced, really impacted us, and that's gone by like this. So another 4 months from now, it's going to be, I swear in July, it's going to be Thanksgiving. Oh my goodness. And so time does go by quick, but that is wonderful advice. The bite-sized chunks, just taking it 1 month at a time.
Yeah.
And then last question, if someone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way for them to reach you to learn more about self-care and seeking help from you?
Sure. They can visit my website for Self-Care with Julia. It's www.juliaayraud.com. That's JuliaAyraud.com.
Excellent. Well, Julia, thank you for your time today. Again, I think just a tremendous value that you offer to the community and with this self-care. And I wish you the best as you continue to help others in your passion and pursuit. All right. Well, thanks, y'all. We will see you next time for our next Wellness Wednesday show. Anyways, we'll sign off and wishing you guys the best this week.